Good morning. I just wanted to kind of share some of the things God's been doing in my life, and with the hopes that maybe it would help somebody else who is possibly struggling in these areas. Uh, as a wife and mother, some of the things I have struggled with have been guilt, perfectionism, a desire for control, and all of these are actually fear based when you think about it. I actually kind of been a perfectionist since I was in school. The desire to get that perfect grade and have, straight A's. And if I would get one question wrong, I would be upset with myself and feel like, oh, I could have done better. And it kind of morphed into a whole new being when I actually had children. And at one point, I had four kids that were like all under the age of 7, and life was very chaotic, as you can imagine. And I kind of ended up developing this control freak nature in the hopes of thinking that if I control every aspect of the day, I'm going to kind of limit the chaos, the trauma the chaos was causing me, limit anything that possibly might go wrong. And, we often do that, and I did it as well with even relational things, because if we've been hurt in the past, what we end up trying to do is control every aspect so that we're not hurt again. We're trying to protect ourselves. It's almost like a defense mechanism that we're doing. But what I kind of learned is control really is an illusion, because there is not a whole lot we have control over. We have control over our actions and we have control over our reactions to situations, but we actually don't have control over situations. And God isn't even asking us to have control over situations. He's saying, leave the outcome of situations to Him. All we have to do is be obedient to Him. And so God really has shown me that this whole desire for control, not only is it an illusion, and it's something that I can never actually grasp or maintain. So with that comes a whole lot of guilt. Because if things aren't perfect, I started to feel guilty. If as a mom, I didn't handle a situation right, I felt guilty. As a wife, if I didn't handle a situation right, I felt guilty. It was like I had this bar so high of a standard. And anytime I fell short, which being that we're not perfect and we're all human, we all fall short, I was continually being beat up by guilt. And when you think about it, they are all fear-based. Because really, what are we fearing? We're fearing the what if. So we go into a situation and we don't handle it right. So then we fear, what's going to happen because I didn't handle it right? Fear. We don't act perfect in a situation, or a situation maybe in our mind we had this crazy ideal scenario in our head of how something was going to work out. And it doesn't even come close to that. And we feel like, well, always dreamed it would turn out like this. Or I thought that if I controlled everything, that the outcome would be this. And again, it all is based on fear of what if the situation doesn't turn out the way I hoped or dreamed. And I learned that, I had to hand over this monster, and it's really what it became, because I got beat up in the arena of guilt, perfectionism, and control for years. I'm going to even say decades. And I had to learn that I have to hand this monster of control over to God. Because the reality is, He is the only one in control. I don't have control. I only have control over how I act and how I react. So I slowly started trying to hand it over to God. But being the control freak that I am, I kept taking it back from Him. I kept ripping it out of His hands. And what God showed me is I was hurting myself over and over and over again. Every time I'd hand it over and then pull it back, hand it over and then pull it back. Because all these wounds of my past that I was holding on to, all this guilt that was in my heart over everything, was causing me to not be able to be healed by Him. Because I was ripping those wounds open over and over and over again. And I had to leave it in His hands and walk away from it. How do you do that? How do you walk away from, say you have a lot of regrets, Say you even have a couple big regrets and you feel like, if I had handled that situation different, if I had made a different decision, boy, in your head, you're thinking things would be a lot better now. But the truth is, God can take all the things of our past, and He, if we hand it over to Him and leave it with Him, will always use them to help mold and shape parts of our character and who we are. And He uses it to help us accomplish His purpose for our lives. But it does require us to hand it over to Him. I ended up trying to do this, and in my own strength, it's impossible. I had to replace this false belief in my head that if I controlled everything, I wouldn't get hurt. And what you got to do is you got to take false beliefs and you got to replace them with truth. So what's the truth in that situation? The truth is, and I heard it in a message from Steve Furtek, he said, your regrets have been redeemed. And that's true. Our regrets have been redeemed. And then I heard in a message from Bill Johnson that your past has been purchased with the blood of Christ. It's not ours anymore. It belongs to God. And we have to stop acting like the past is something that we own, because it's not. God owns it now. He purchased it. And only He can use it to help us achieve His purpose for our life. I know Lamentations 3:58 talks about how God has redeemed our life. Acts 20:28 talks about that He has purchased us with the Church of God with His own blood. And 2 Timothy 1:7 says, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And Romans 8:28 says that we know that all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. So what I had to do is I literally wrote down, my regrets have been redeemed, my past has been purchased with the blood of Christ. And every time a wave of guilt would come up, or a thought that I had to be perfect, or a thought that I needed to control, the monster of control came in and I have to control all this, I would recite that. My regrets have been redeemed. No, my past has been purchased by the blood of Christ. It is not mine anymore. And I have to admit, the first few weeks, I had to probably say it 20 to 30 times to myself. It was that much of a bondage and struggle for me. But as time went on, I was able to stop that negative type of thinking immediately. And I was able to cast it down and say, no, my regrets have been redeemed. I'm not going there. And as time went on, it began easier and easier and easier to fight. And once that guilt and perfectionism and control has been lifting it off of me, I feel so much more free. Now, I could have told you before any of this began that I felt somewhat free, but I guess you don't know how strong something has gripped your life until you feel it lift off of you. I did not realize how much I was operating in the areas of fear and guilt and control until it was lifted off of me and I wasn't operating in it. Because my heart has always been, I want to show the love of God through my life to other people. That's what I want to do. But I had to get myself right, in the sense of, if I'm operating continually out of guilt and perfectionism and being a control freak, that I'm not exhibiting in my life that my past has been redeemed, my sins have been forgiven and washed clean, and that my regrets, no matter what they are, have been redeemed. And when that has been lifted off of me, I'm much more able to exhibit God's love in my life and even walk in and exhibit the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Because one of the things that I really have been praying is, I want to know you intimately, God. And the more I'm praying I want to know you intimately, the more He's revealing things in my life that are stopping me from getting to know Him at an even more intimate level. Because if I'm back here condemning myself and saying I shouldn't have done that, that was wrong, it's hopeless, or I have to control everything, and because the situation I couldn't have it under my total control, that I'm not good enough. As long as I'm operating in that, I was having a hard time entering in and knowing God intimately, because none of those are things that God believes about me. So I hope that kind of helps people, anybody else out there that might be, suffering from feeling, guilty all the time, or kind of living in a fear, desire for control-based life, and that there is freedom on the other side, because our regrets have been redeemed, our pasts have been purchased, and that we don't need to control outcomes and situations. We just need to intimately know God and be obedient to Him. So, thanks.